It's a manual transfer switch that you can DIY at home. It has two different options that you can select for each circuit, either line voltage, which is going to be the power coming from the city, or generator voltage, which will be the power coming from whatever external source that you want to power in an emergency. You simply would select the circuit that you want, switch it over to generator, and then there's going to be a plug that I'm going to show you how to install that'll go right on the front of this. You can either plug in a generator or a solar generator or whatever you have. The installation process is super easy. Just select an area that's very close to your circuit breaker panel and just hang this thing in place, and you can kind of move it around during the installation as needed. It comes with everything you need to install it, including the conduit. Now you will need to get into your breaker panel. Feel free to turn the power off to your home if you feel comfortable working live. That's up to you. To remove these knockouts, they can sometimes be a little bit tough. You have to have a hammer and a big flathead screwdriver, and you can kind of wiggle them around and pull it out. Now this one that I'm going to be using here is a right angle connector. It has two screws that are going to secure the armored cable so that it doesn't wiggle around. You just put this thing through the bottom, and then there's a little nut that you screw onto the top, and that's how they secure into the breaker panel. This helps prevent your wire from getting frayed on any little edges that could cut it. We're gonna need to drill a small hole in the stud. Ideally, that hole would be kind of parallel with that connector, but I had some other wires in the way here, so we're just gonna make it kind of work. The other side of the wire is, of course, gonna get connected into the transfer switch. Removing the cover on this, just a few screws. I recommend leaving it a little bit loose. Don't mount the whole thing completely yet until you get your wire in place, because this is a lot of wires to squeeze into this box here, so having a little wiggle room is actually kind of helpful. Kit did come with a second right angle connector that you could use if yours was parallel with it. Once you have your conduit installed, go ahead and tighten down the screw so it doesn't go anywhere. This part of the process was a little bit fiddly because you have to move a ton of wires up into the panel without kinking them, bending them in some crazy ways, but we did end up getting it done. Again, that hole should be a little bit higher, would have made that connection a lot easier, but I had some other phone wires I didn't want to move out of the way. But with everything tacked in place, that's really the hardest part of the job. You can go ahead and permanently mount the transfer switch now. You don't need any wiggle room anymore. At this point, you can go ahead and hook up the outlet for the generator. It's just color to color, and screw on the plate on the front of the panel. The next part is super easy. These wires are all labeled A through E, and they have red and black. Basically, your red wire is going to go on the breaker for the circuit that you want to back up, and then your black wire is just going to get wire nutted to that wire that was on the breaker. So you just pull one off, put one on, pull one off, put one on. It's super easy to do. You just have to label as you're going, because everything here, I'm sorry, it's A through F. You get F circuit as well. And the only other thing that you have to wire is you have to put a ground wire and a neutral wire, which is pretty easy. They did not come stripped. All these things you need basic hand tools to do. So the green wire would go onto the grounding bar, and the white wire would go onto the neutral bar. It should be pretty obvious in your panel which is which. Here's me just starting to install the circuits. You get included some wire nuts here as well. So you're going to wire nut onto one end of the wire that you pull off the breaker, and then the other one just goes right into the breaker slot, and you tighten it down with a screwdriver, and you do that for 6 different circuits. It's super easy. I think I picked like a refrigerator, my garage, my office, and now they're completely backed up with power. It does get a little hairy inside the breaker panel, especially if you already have a ton of wires. So you can clean those up with wire nuts, or as you see fit, or wire ties rather, and then you can close everything in, and now you have a transfer switch ready to go. All in all, the job only took a couple hours, and now we are ready. In case of any emergency, we can power up those 6 individual circuits from an external power supply.